years old, I used to live in my grandma's house in Ecuador. Many of the neighbors would talk to my parents about seeing weird stuff in the house, like shadows moving around the windows when we weren't home. The first thing that would come to our heads was that someone must have broken into the house, but nothing would ever be missing. Of course, they didn't think that there was someone breaking in. They were sure that our house was haunted. Everyone even refused to come inside for parties or any other special occasion. They told us to get a priest and to get rid of any bad spirits. We didn't take their warnings as something important because my parents don't believe in those kinds of things. Although I would hear someone going up the stairs at night, our stairs were really old, so they would make a loud sound when someone would step on them. However, when I checked, there was nothing. I would just run to my bed and cover my head with the sheets until I fell asleep. One night, someone started knocking on the door really hard and screaming. We got really scared as it was 12:30 a.m. and everyone was asleep by then in our neighborhood. It was extremely rare that someone would be up at that time. My dad took his shotgun and told my mom and me to stay in my room and not move. I was scared for my dad's safety, but I felt relieved when my dad said my neighbor's name. He informed us that a water pipe had broke in our backyard and the water was spraying his house and broke one of his windows. He was nice about the situation and even said he'd help us fix the pipe. My dad got the shovels, as the pipes were underground, and we had to dig to see what was wrong and how we could fix it. As we started digging, they realized that they needed other materials, and they went to get it, leaving me alone in the backyard. There was barely any light back there. The only source of light we had was the moon, and one light post a block away from my house. I was pissed off. I mean, how could they leave an 8-year-old boy there by himself in the dark? But I didn't say anything about it. About 10 minutes had gone by since they left, and I was wondering what was taking them so long. They were only getting some materials after all. But as I was going to go back inside, I saw something moving really fast at the corner of my eye. I froze. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. All I could do was move my eyes. I started to freak out, looking around to see what the hell was running around me. I didn't see anything. It was as if there was nothing there at all. But then I looked to my right, and I saw something that haunts me to this very day. It was a demon, in my opinion. It was so tall, around 7 or 8 feet tall. It had long, skinny legs with a really buff body. It also had very long spiral horns, and his eyes shined in the dark. I still couldn't move. The thing ran by me, looked at me, but it didn't do anything to me. It just looked at me. It could have been a goat or a sheep. I've never seen one so big or one that walks on 2 legs like a human. It ran, and I hid behind a big tree by my neighbor's house. Finally, I could move. I yelled at the top of my lungs while crying hysterically. My dad came running with his shotgun in hand and asked me what was wrong. I explained what I saw to him, but he didn't believe me, nor did my mom. But someone did. My neighbor told me that he thought nothing happened to me because I'm a kid. As time passed, I slowly got over it. I moved from that house and moved to New York. My grandparents sold the house, and I left that experience in the past. However, that's not where this story ends. In my sophomore year in high school, I had a nightmare. The thing that I saw that night was in it this time. I could only see its head as it was hiding behind the big tree. He said 3 words that'll haunt me until my time comes. It said, "You can't hide." I woke up from my nightmare and headed to school. While in school, at around 12:30 p.m., there was an announcement. A classmate of mine had been killed in front of my school by a car without brakes. I turned pale as I thought my nightmare may have something to do with the incident. I was scared and even went home early. I told my parents about it, but this time they took me to a priest and he said he'd give me something in 3 days. Every single day I had the same nightmare until my priest gave me a blessed cross, and I haven't had any nightmares about the thing anymore. However, every night I sleep with the covers over my head. Call me a coward or anything you want, but the thing still hasn't left my mind. Those 3 words haunt me till this day, making me wonder when I will forget or move on from the thing. I grew up in what people would consider a bad household. My mom and dad were in a bad relationship, and they did nothing but argue every day. My mom would complain that my dad would stick in the basement almost every day and never spend any time with me. And my dad would always have the same response, that he's doing research down there. The only problem was that we were prohibited from going down to the basement. 3 locks were built into the basement door, and he kept his one key on his old key ring. The key had a torn blue sticker at the bottom of it with a brown rusty tip. However, my mom finally got a hold of it somehow, and that same day when I came home from school, Dad suddenly told me she left us for another man. He seemed truly broken and sunk in his misery, so I tried pretending to be normal at first, but I couldn't stop crying like a baby when I finally got back in my room. After a few months of emotional breakdowns, my dad finally got over it. Furthermore, he started to visit the basement more consistently to the point where I would feel like I lived alone. I kept thinking my dad was working very hard, since I saw him being very distraught after coming upstairs from the basement. I thought everything was fine until I started hearing noises at night. They weren't just regular noises. It was kind of someone's crying and scream of agony. But the most disturbing sound of all was the sound of growling, like some kind of beast would exist down in the basement. The next morning, I complained to my dad, but he acted like he had no idea what I was talking about as he walked past me to get ready for work. So I just shook it off, assuming that he was watching some horror movie down there, or if I was just imagining the whole thing. I went back to my room. As it was the weekend, I was ready to catch up on some Saturday morning cartoons. I turned on my TV, and as I got ready to change the channel, I heard a familiar name. The news reporter was naming over 40 missing people in our town, and my mom was one of those names as they briefly showed her picture and information. I was confused about who would file a missing person report for her, because my grandparents both died in a tragic car accident years ago. She had no siblings, and my dad told me she left us for another man. I wanted to inform my dad, but soon I was concerned it would make him depressed again. And in a way, I was still angry at her for leaving us. So I ignored it and changed the channel. A few minutes later, my dad came in to tell me he was leaving for work. He gave me a kiss on my forehead and informed me that he'd be back later that night. After he left, I invited my best friend Austin to come over. He then arrived shortly after, and we played a game on my PlayStation. As we were about to plunge into the game, we suddenly heard a strange noise coming from the basement. "What was that?" Austin asked, being confused. "I don't know. My dad does some kinds of experiments down there. It's probably a rat or something." Austin looked amused. "No, dude, we can't go down there. My dad said so," I said quickly, bringing an end to Austin's excitement. It has no reason to doubt that Austin was disappointed. Then he asked for something to drink, so I went to the kitchen to get some juice for him. However, I was hit with a foul odor of something rotting as soon as I arrived in the kitchen. I looked around to see what could be the cause of the smell, and I found that the basement door was cracked open. I went to close it, but the curiosity got the best of me. So I called Austin to help me investigate. We darted down the stairs to the basement, clenching our noses at that horrible smell. It was dark until Austin found a light switch and quickly flicked it on. However, we had to regret our decision instantly after we saw the inside of the basement. There were people hanging from hooks with random limbs missing. As we were standing in horror, Austin clenched my shirt strongly. I could see the piles of feces and human remains contained within certain sections of the room. But the most disturbing and disgusting sight of all was the cage in the dark right corner of the room. The inside of it seemed to be a person sleeping at first, but as it looked up, I quickly realized that thing was not a person. What is that? Austin shouted, shaking with fear. I ignored his question. To be more specific, I couldn't answer. That thing was indescribably frightening. It looked like a deformed human with its mouth filled with crooked and ragged teeth covering a majority of its face. Its face pointed outward, with creases where the nose should be. The eyes were bulging out of its head as it fixated its glance toward Austin and me. Food, it said to us slowly with excitement and a malicious voice. Then it started clawing at the iron bars of the cage with its needle-like hands. I sat there in horror until Austin grabbed my wrist. We ran up the stairs scrambling for the escape and shut the door. After I made sure it was perfectly locked, I saw Austin sitting on the carpet floor with his knees to his chest. Once we had a few moments of silence, I then finally realized what really happened to my mom and those missing people in our town. At that instant, Austin muttered like this. Your dad, he was feeding those people to that thing. Now, what should I do now?
Have you ever wondered why they say, would you like fries with that? After every meal you purchase, the offer seemingly comes up despite you already ordering. I know why, and I'll tell you, but I need to give a disclaimer that this story isn't for the faint-hearted. This allegedly happened to a friend of mine. We'll call him John, and we'll call his roommate Brad. The fall semester was in full effect, and the pair had both studied at the same campus nearby their student housing. It was alleged that John moved in with Brad as he was originally from out of town and needed a place to stay for the following curriculum. Brad was known to not be the most pleasant individual to study around, due to his constant guitar rehearsals for his rock band. This would cause John to always opt to study at a nearby McDonald's. It was usually the go-to place for students, as this particular franchise was a 24-hour establishment. The McDonald's was never packed, at least not during the night shifts, so finding a place to sit wasn't so bad. You would occasionally find a loiterer or two, and were guaranteed to find this one female bookworm who would literally show up every night. John would always purchase a meal before study, giving him a plausible excuse to dine without feeling like he was loitering. Hello, sir. Welcome to McDonald's. How may I take your order? Just a Big Mac and a small Coke, please. All right, sir. And would you like fries with that? No thank you. Are you sure, sir? It's almost 3 a.m. Okay, so what? All right, sir. That'll be $8.19 after taxes. And how will you be paying? Card, ma'am. John taps his card on the machine and awaits his food as the odd behavior from the cashier left him feeling uneasy. Nonetheless, John grabs his tray of food and sits down to begin his long chore of studying. About 10 minutes before 3 a.m., the female bookworm slides by John's table with a frantic look on her face and says,
It's almost time. You should probably pick up your fries now.
What the hell are you talking about, lady?
Dude, hurry up. We don't have much time.
The female proceeds to head towards the front counter while John sat there dumbfounded. John then gets up from his seat and follows the girl's lead by ordering a large fry after her. As the pair head to their respective tables with their fries, John approaches the female and begins to interrogate her by saying, I got the fries, now what?
I recommend just sitting down with your fries. It's literally going to be 3 a.m. any second now.
What the hell are you talking about, lady?
You don't know about him? The clown?
Who?
Duh, Ronald McDonald. Haven't you gotten the hint why they always ask if you want fries with that?
No. Why?
I recommend you always have fries on hand, or else he'll turn you into a McFlurry.
And what do we have on today's menu? Hello, young lads. Such a fine couple you are. Care to share some delectable fries? Pretty please?
Okay.
Sure, sir. Good. I'll catch you all next time. And make sure to have fries with your Big Macs and Happy Meals. And that's when he departed the building. The more John studied at the McDonald's, the more he slowly realized that this was an everyday thing. Well, a 3 a.m. thing to be exact. The so-called Ronald McDonald would torment the customers and employees for fries, as if they were in debt to him for something. Nobody really bothered to do a damn thing about it and just went along with the whole facade. John, on the other hand, wasn't so pleased with the idea of being taxed to sit at McDonald's in exchange for his fries, but there was nothing he could really do about it. John had spread the word about the clown, but no one really believed him, especially his loud roommate Brad. One night, John decided to bring Brad to the McDonald's and prove that what he was saying was in fact legit. Brad didn't believe him and scoffed at the whole ordeal, as if the clown was some fake phony urban legend or some weirdo hustling food from regular customers. The time was 10 minutes shy before 3, and that's when everyone excluding Brad went to the front counter to pick up an order of fries. What makes the story more disturbing was how Brad carried himself. He had the same stubborn attitude and remained seated at the table despite John's multiple warnings. When 3 a.m. came around, the clown entered the McDonald's and immediately approached the bookworm's table first. Smells like this batch was fresh off the fryer. The clown then approaches John and Brad's table as they looked at the clown with their jaws hanging to the ground. Ooh, look what we have here! That's when John saw Brad holding a handful of fries with his bare hands, and John's fry container completely empty without an ounce of potato in it.
I recommend you always have fries on hand, or else he'll turn you into a McFlurry.
No! Ah! Night of 2011, when I was out trick-or-treating with 2 of my close friends. For disclaimer purposes, I'll be using pseudonyms, as I like to keep the identity of everyone involved in this story anonymous. That being said, I'll go by the alias Mike. My friends will go by Tom and Jerry, respectively. We were all dressed as characters from our favorite childhood cartoons. I was dressed as Naruto, as that was my favorite anime. Tom was dressed as Goku from Dragon Ball Z. Jerry was dressed as Spider-Man, as he was a hardcore fan of the Tobey Maguire series that aired in the early 2000s. I remember us trick-or-treating for about a solid hour or 2 around the neighborhood. I could feel my legs get sore from all the relentless walking and strain from carrying my heavy sack of candy. My bag was starting to get full to the brim. My friends' bags were just as full, as they began carrying their sacks over their shoulders like they were Santa Claus delivering gifts on a Christmas evening. If I had $1 for every candy that was inside my bag, I would have definitely had enough to buy myself a new gaming console. Guys, can we go home? Dude, don't give up yet. We still got room in our bags. Just 10 more minutes, man. You're just saying that because you're practically wearing a onesie made out of women's leggings. At least you don't have to wear this stupid wig on your head. Stop being such wimps. This day only comes once a year, so grow up, hair, and let's keep going. Jerry began to make his way further down the street, while me and Tom looked at each other with a disdained look that screamed, "Let's get this over with quick." We then proceeded to walk towards Jerry's direction. I recall Jerry already standing in front of a house with his arms extending his bag towards the candy giver saying, "Trick or treat!" I also noticed this one trick-or-treater wearing a Jason Voorhees mask standing behind him. He was a tall and slim kind of guy who was either a really big kid or just an older man who didn't want to give up the trick-or-treating tradition. As we approached another house, Jerry said, "Alright guys, just 2 more houses, then we can bounce." The individual wearing the Jason mask casually inserts himself in the conversation and says, "Would you guys mind if I trick-or-treat with you as well? I lost my friends and don't have my cell phone on me." I personally didn't want this guy tagging along, as I was already done with the day and didn't need any further baggage prolonging the night. I casually make eye contact with Tom and Jerry while desperately trying to portray signals to not accept the guy's request. Jerry enthusiastically says, "Yeah, sure, let's go." "Thanks, guys. You made my Halloween so much better." We then proceeded to walk towards the next house while I began sulking under my breath saying, "Frickin' prick, since when was Jerry the shot caller?" After about several minutes of trick-or-treating, I could honestly say that I didn't mind his company, as he seemed like a nice guy and introduced himself as Jason. No pun intended. We eventually finished trick-or-treating and decided to call it a night. Myself, Tom, and Jerry say our farewells to Jason as he responds saying, "It was nice meeting you guys. Just out of curiosity, whereabouts do y'all live? Maybe I can walk with y'all home." Again, Jerry sporadically discloses the name of our street to him as me and Tom expressively show our disdain to Jerry for revealing such personal information.
Well, how ironic. I live around y'all's area too. You guys mind if I walk home with you?
Me and Tom remained silent as we made it pretty evident that we were upset at Jerry. Dude, I don't think my friends want to go—
You guys look awfully tired. Just to make y'all feel better, I do know a shortcut if you're trying to avoid the long walk home.
Yeah, sure, dude. Count me in, dude. Where's it at? Jason then points his finger in the direction of an entrance of a forest preserve and says,
We'd have to walk through there. There's a path that could get us home in about 10 minutes tops.
I'm gonna have to pass. I don't like deer, and I'm not trying to get eaten by a bear today. Screw it, I'm going. Same. I want to get home faster, dude. Later, Jerry. Me, Tom, and Jason begin making our way inside the forest, while Jerry casually hangs back to go to his alternate direction home. As we got deeper into the forest, Jason took out a flashlight from his candy bag and began to flash it towards the pathway ahead of us. Well, I wouldn't really call it a pathway, as the entire ground was covered in dirt, leaves, trees, and bushes scattered everywhere. I remember walking for about 10 minutes, but in reality, it felt like 30. His directions were precise and his voice was comprehensible. I understood every instruction he was directing us to walk in, but couldn't digest why the walk was taking so long. I had completely ignored the fact that it was well over 10 minutes. For better context, me and Tom were leading the walk while Jason shined his flashlight from behind while giving out directions. Yo, are we there yet? My legs are freaking killing me, man. Dude, when are we gonna make it home? It's been like 20 minutes already.
We'll be arriving there in just a minute, boys.
As we began to walk further down the forest, I casually turned my head to glance at Jason, only to see him wearing his mask still, despite trick-or-treating being over with. I started to feel a little uncomfortable, and began questioning the guy's integrity by saying, Dude, why are you still wearing your mask? And I'm starting to believe you're not leading us home.
Stop!
Jason then points at 2 shovels sitting on a small area of open dirt and says,
Both of you, pick up the shovels now!
Dude, what's going on? Jason then pulls out a long machete from the back of his pants and says,
Pick up those shovels and start digging a hole!
What?
Do it, weeb!
Dude, please, just let us go!
Pick up the shovel and start digging, Naruto! This is your last warning that I'm killing you both!
That's when me and Tom pick up the shovels and frantically start digging. In the back of my head, I was legitimately contemplating putting up a fight with this psycho as it was 2 against 1 with the aid of the shovels. Unfortunately, I couldn't muster up the courage to put up a fight against him as I didn't want to run the risk of mine or Tom's head getting chopped off. About 15 to 20 minutes later, me and Tom dug a hole big enough for the both of us to fit inside it. As we were about to make our way out of the hole, Jason shouts,
Don't move! Stay in the hole!
As he forcibly grabs both the shovels away from us while holding the machete against us. Jason then tucks the machete inside his pants, grabs one of the shovels, and begins burying us alive with the dirt we just dug out. I began to feel my vision getting blurry as the overwhelming amount of dirt he was tossing at us impaired my vision. Please, I don't want to die. I'm too young for this. Please! Please, let us go! Why are you doing this? We're only kids! All I remember thinking about in that moment was how a human could do such an inhumane act, and how I was literally going to share my remaining moments on Earth being buried alive with my best friend. I was at the point where I had already accepted death. I recall the taste of dirt and dead bugs going inside my mouth. The sensation of dirt hitting my skin was all I felt. That's when I heard a loud thud like he had just bashed Tom's brains out. I couldn't hear or feel any more dirt hitting the surface of my face. I rubbed my eyes to clear my vision, only to see Jason laying face down on the ground unconscious, with my other friend Jerry holding the shovel. Me and Tom then dig ourselves out of the hole and hop back to ground level. Despite surviving the catastrophe and being able to run away scot-free, I grabbed the machete from the back of Jason's pants. I then held him up by the forehead and began hacking at his neck, slicing and dicing repeatedly. I eventually decapitated his head while my entire Naruto costume was covered in blood. I remember seeing my friends nonchalantly watching me with a gaunt emotion, almost like my sadistic actions didn't even faze them. I then pushed his body into the hole as my friends began to collectively bury him. As outlandish as the story sounds, it was a true story that actually happened to me. I always wondered what heaven would be like if I was to die alongside my friend Tom that night. Jerry was initially supposed to head home, but decided to follow us as he saw the machete tucked in the back of Jason's pants. He began to directly follow behind our footsteps and unexpectedly witnessed the altercation go down. As we were getting buried alive, he used the opportunity to knock Jason out with the second shovel sitting behind him. I still don't know to this day if his remains were ever discovered.
I drove an ice cream truck for a couple of years. I am the kind of person who never stopped at one place or at one job. I kind of did everything I could to earn money to travel the world. After a part-time job at a local restaurant, I was getting bored in a small town. I was planning to go out and get on the roads. I had this one friend from school who told me she has got a permanent job as a chef in California. I remember she had an ice cream truck, so without wasting any more time, I asked her if I could rent that from her to make some money. I won't lie, she not only gave me the truck forever, but didn't even take a single penny from me. So, with an entrepreneurial attitude, I started my mini business. I had no idea that I always had a knack for the food business. I started to travel in that truck and sell ice cream for a living in the entire Oklahoma area. I renovated the truck with my hard-earned savings and started a new chapter in my life. I generally stopped near playgrounds and schools in the evenings. The fun part of the job was to see kids chattering around me with excitement and laughter. After a month, I became familiar with the kids. I remember every little face to whom I sold ice cream. It was a warm summer afternoon, also a holiday. Expecting the children to come early to the park, I started driving the truck to the location. When I reached the park, I saw children have started to arrive. I pulled the truck under a tree near the sidewalks and rang the bell attached to the truck. They all gathered around the truck and started asking for their favorites while raising $1 with their tiny hands. It was like feeding 1,000 tadpoles in a small pond. I was busy distributing the ice cream when my eyes went to a little boy sitting at some distance. He was sitting on a green bench while keeping his head down. It seemed really odd that amidst all these active kids, the boy was on his own like this. Almost every kid in the park took ice cream from me, but that boy didn't even turn around once towards the truck. I thought maybe he has no money. So I decided to give that kid a chocolate cone for free. I turned around and prepared the cone for him, but when I looked back, he was gone. The empty bench lied there. I got a bit sad and started to clean the truck before moving on to another spot. I was cleaning the floor of the truck when I heard a small knock on the order desk. I turned around and saw that it was that little boy who was sitting on that bench a few minutes back. He was standing near the truck, but his head was still down. Sun was about to set, so the area under the tree got a bit darker than usual. I couldn't see his face at all. I asked in a cheerful voice, "Do you want an ice cream?" Without moving up his head, he raised his small hands toward me and said,
"A strawberry cone, please."
His fingers were dirty and there were mud under his nails. It seemed like he dug the ground with his small hands just a few moments back. I gave him the strawberry cone, but refused to take the money. But he didn't move away. He just stood there like before, holding the $1 on his muddy hand as it dangled in the air. The kid's body language felt very weird to me. I have never seen such a calm and extremely quiet kid like him till now. I took the money, and the kid took his strawberry cone and turned around to walk away. "Hey, what is your name?" He stopped and without turning around replied,
"Mom told me never to talk to strangers. I have to go home. She's waiting for me."
He then walked away. I got a bit surprised seeing this kid's obedience towards his mother. Such a well-behaved kid, I thought to myself. That night, after coming home, I still couldn't stop thinking about that child's unexpected behavior. I decided to go to the same park tomorrow and talk to that kid more. The next day, I went there again. As I went on selling ice cream, my eyes kept scanning the park for that little boy the entire time. At a point, when I realized he won't come today, I started to pack up for the day. I was putting the ice cream tubs inside the mini fridge when I almost gasped in fear. A small dirty hand was resting on the desk of the truck. It didn't take me a second to realize whose hand was that. "Jeez, you scared me," I said in a relieved voice. The boy stood like before, holding a dirty dollar in his hand while keeping his head down. I said, "Now, we are not strangers anymore. You can tell me your name?" He said in the same emotionless voice,
I'm Mikhail.
"Well, hello, Mikhail. Do you come here alone?" He nodded his head slowly from up to down. I handed him his strawberry ice cream. As I went to take the dollar from his hand, my fingers ran over his index finger, and his dirty nail came off, revealing the red flesh underneath. "Oh God, you are hurt. You need help," I said, seeing this vicious sight. But without saying anything, the boy turned around and started to walk away. It seemed like he didn't even feel the pain when the nail came off. Drops of blood laid on the desk, and I watched the boy walk away as if nothing happened. I couldn't hold my curiosity anymore. As soon as he went behind that tree, I came down and started to follow him. The boy was walking towards the left corner of the park that was now in complete darkness. This side was also covered with vines and weeds. I had no intention of scaring the child, so I maintained my distance and watched him secretly. After walking to a big tree at the end of the park, he stopped under it. The small lamp on the other side of the road gave me some light to that corner. The boy crouched down on the road and started digging up the soil with his small hands. He dug without stopping. His nails and fingers cut open with the pressure. Raw flesh and blood came out of his wounds as he went on. But I still couldn't see his face. I was thinking to stop this child from hurting himself like this when the boy placed the ice cream in the pit he just dug up and buried it with soil again. I couldn't watch anymore, so I came out from the bushes screaming. "What are you doing? Are you all right?" For the first time, the boy lifted up his face towards me. On that warm summer evening, I felt the gush of cold wind shivering down my spine. The kid had no eyes. Instead of his eyeballs, dark hollow eye sockets stared at me. A painful expression appeared on his face and he said,
I want to go home, but no matter how much I dig to come out, I always end up here.
and vanished in the air right in front of my eyes. I fell to the floor with a huge shock. My mouth opened in shock and my heart stopped in fear. Sweat appeared on my forehead as I tried to make out what just happened a few seconds earlier. I can't explain how I picked myself up that day and returned home. The next day, when I went to that park, I saw cops near the park and it was sealed like a crime scene. A small crowd gathered on the sidewalk and watched this entire situation. Out of confusion, I asked the man standing in the crowd, "What's going on here?" He said in a restless voice, "They have traced a missing kid from last month. It seemed like someone abducted this kid for ransom and later murdered him. An old woman came to jog in the morning when her dog dug up that ground under the tree. That's when she saw a small hand lurking beneath the soil. Look, there he is." I followed the man's eyes and saw the paramedic taking away a corpse of a small child dressed exactly like that little boy. The corpse had no eyes, which supposedly got eaten by maggots. The body has been there for months, so its rotten smell made the air heavy. Everyone covered their nose, and some even walked away to avoid vomiting. It came to know that the boy's babysitter brought him to the park and later abducted him, asking for ransom from his parents. When they threatened her, saying she will never get away with this, the cruel woman strangled the boy and buried his body under that tree. The most shocking part was the kid was alive when she buried him. He fainted with the trauma and pressure on his neck, but when he regained consciousness, he found himself buried under the ground. He tried to come out while digging the soil but choked to death during that struggle. His nails were all broken as he suffered silently. Now I actually understand what that kid meant when he said, "I want to go home, but no matter how much I dig to come out, I always end up here." The poor kid's soul was trapped here for a month, and all he wanted was to go home. I hope this kid is finally resting in peace. And to that babysitter, may she rot in jail for her entire life.
It was a boring Monday night, and I was sitting by the counter watching YouTube videos when I heard a car pull into the drive-thru. I quickly put my phone aside and waited for the customer to drive up. As soon as the car approached the window, I said in a fake, joyful voice,
Welcome to Burger King. May I take your order?
"Yeah, we're hungry." I saw a man wearing a vibrant colored Hawaiian t-shirt sitting in the driver's seat. He had a disturbing stare, but that's not the only thing that was weird about him. He had a skeleton dressed up as a woman in his passenger seat. I couldn't decide whether it was creepy or funny, but I took the high road and let it slide.
May I take your order, sir?
A Whopper for me. And what will you have, darling? Now the situation took a creepy turn. The man kept talking to the skeleton as if it was a real woman. He was smiling and laughing and whispering into its ear, which it obviously didn't have. He went on with his insanity for another 5 minutes, and I still patiently waited because that's what was expected of me in this job. Okay, so a Whopper for me, and she'll have a cheeseburger.
Sure, sir.
I handed him the order along with the receipt, and he paid in cash. Seeing his behavior, I could tell he thought the skeleton was a real person. He slowly drove away, and I sat by the window like a statue for at least half an hour. It took me some time to digest what just happened tonight. After that night, this man became a regular customer. Almost every other night, he came to our store dressed in the same manner with his skeleton girlfriend and ordered the same food. At some point, I too got used to it. I'm the person who loves minding her own business, so I never bothered to ask. I just did my job and he went on his way. One night it was raining heavily, and I was waiting for my shift to end so that I could go home. Suddenly, I saw the man pulling into the drive-thru. He ordered the usual and started talking to his skeleton girlfriend. Meanwhile, I found out that we were running short on cheese, so it won't be possible to make a cheeseburger for his skeleton girlfriend tonight.
Sir? I apologize, but we're running a little short on cheese. Can we substitute it with something else?
Oh no! But Jenny loves cheese. This is her favorite.
I understand that, but as I said, we are short on cheese. The triple Whopper is the same price. How about that?
But Jenny doesn't want that! She wants her usual cheeseburger! I was being polite to this freak the whole time, but when he screamed at me, I lost my calm.
Well, why don't you take Jenny where she belongs? Like, a graveyard?
The man widened his eyes and stared at me with an intense gaze. I expected him to be angry at this point, but surprisingly, he didn't get angry. Instead, a creepy grin appeared on his face. Oh, I can see what's going on here. You're jealous. Jenny, she is jealous. Isn't that sweet? She's crushing on you, bae.
What the hell? Look, you freak. That is nothing but a skeleton, and no one is crushing on you. The truth is, you know you can't even get a real girlfriend. Maybe that's why you're putting on this freak show.
As soon as I said that, I saw the color of his face change. He didn't say a single word and drove away silently. A week passed by and he was nowhere to be seen. Even though I felt bad for being rude to a customer, he did get on my nerves that night. Hence, he gave me no choice. But after some time, he showed up again. This time, he didn't have the skeleton in his car. He came alone. I wanted to stay away from any kind of trouble, so I behaved professionally.
Your order, sir?
A Whopper for me. I delivered him the food and he handed me the money. I thought, thank God it's over. But things took a turn, as he took a U-turn and he ate the entire burger like this, and then drove away. I mean, I can't explain this obscene behavior, but all I can say is, that night after going home, I took a long bath. I've never felt this disgusted ever in my life. The next day, I informed my boss about this man, because this was getting too much for me to take. He told me to call 911 immediately if I see him again. He also informed the other day shift workers about this guy. Everyone was on the lookout for him to come and get arrested by the cops for charges of harassment. But again, he didn't show up for weeks. Even though everyone told me this man was just a crazy freak and that he's gone, I knew he would come again. And he didn't prove me wrong. It was around midnight. I was packing my stuff to leave early that day. I already informed my boss about this when suddenly I heard car tires creaking in the near distance. It took me a fraction of a second to recognize the car. It was him. The odd customer. I dialed 911 right away and waited for him to approach me. As soon as he stopped near the window, I noticed something different this time. A girl was sitting next to him, and by a girl, I mean an actual person. I could tell she was heavily drunk. I could smell the strong odor of alcohol coming from her clothes. She was completely passed out in the passenger seat, and a terrifying feeling grabbed my heart. I knew this man must have lured her into his trap, because there's no way a sensible person would ever agree to hang out with this freak. He gave me a death-cold stare and smiled in the scariest way possible. "That's my girlfriend, and she is real. I can prove that to you." Before I could act on this manner, he took out a wrench from the car's glove compartment and stared at me one last time. "See for yourself. Here we go." He then started to bludgeon the girl ruthlessly. "She's real! She's real! She's real!" He kept screaming like a psycho while smashing her face with the wrench. Her body started to tremble like roadkill, but due to her stage of intoxication, she couldn't get the chance to scream once. I froze at the window. I couldn't believe what was happening in front of my eyes. The man kept beating her, even after her brains came out, gushing with blood splattering everywhere. "I told you she's real! Now do you believe me? Do you? You hoe!" I heard the sirens of the cop cars nearby, but I couldn't bear the sight anymore. I collapsed on the ground, screaming out loud. 2 days later, I woke up in the hospital. My boss came to see me. He told me that the cops caught the man red-handed. There's no question he's guilty of first-degree murder. The girl he murdered that night went to the local pub. He probably picked her up once she passed out and brought her to the drive-thru. The cops are making sure that this psycho gets what he deserves. I don't think I'll ever be able to...